Welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined by Sean Zerillo to break down Tuesday's slate in the bigs. We're also going to have Grant Neiffer here at the end of the episode to give out his dinger card for Tuesday. But first, happy Bobby Bonilla Day to all you who celebrate out there in baseball fandom and weird contracts. Whatever brings you to it, it's a story that we can't look away from, because when this contract buyout was devised in 2000, reaching 2035 when it actually ends, when Bobby's going to be 72 years old, that seemed like it was distant, far away land. We're never going to get there. Well, now we are just 10 years from that finish line. One other Bonilla tidbit that I'd like to throw out: he is going to make $315,000 more this season than Paul Skeens. So just the story that keeps on giving. And Sean, first I want to get your thoughts on this annual story that always brings a smile to baseball fans. I would imagine everyone, but the Mets, even the Mets fans, they seem to embrace it. The ownership has said, we need to get him on the field. We need to have a Bobby Bonilla Day. Just may as well lean into the skid a little bit. I mean, time has healed this wound insofar as that 1.19 million, whatever it turns out to be with interest, isn't as much money as it was probably in 2011. Now it just seems like a rounding error. But what do you think about this story as it pops up every year on July 1st?
My thoughts are that teams have learned absolutely nothing about giving out bad long-term contracts. It still happens all the time, not just in baseball, but in many sports. And frankly, giving contracts to guys who have extensive injury histories, giving them to pitchers who are much likelier to break down going forward, giving them out to big hitters with big weight issues who may get injured during those contracts. I was going through the list of the worst contracts in MLB history, the worst contracts the past couple of decades or so, and there does seem to be a theme in regards to these guys who fail on the contracts. Either they are a little bit too big or injury prone, or they're pitchers. That tends to be one of the three buckets that these guys fall into. The injury prone bucket would be Anthony Rendon, who had tons of issues staying healthy earlier in his career, fell in the collegiate draft because he was banged up in college. He had known injury issues going all the way back to college, put together a few nice seasons with the Nationals, won the World Series, and the Angels gave him a 7-year, $245 million contract. He has played 257 games over the course of that deal. So he's basically earned like $900,000 per game played, or he's earned 1/90th of that contract per game played. And looking at the other bad contracts in recent history, Mad Bum was fine, health wise up until he broke down basically with the Giants, but investing in pitchers in their mid 30s, probably not the highest upside move. Barry Zito, that contract with the Giants looked really bad by the time of the end of his tenure there. And then there was one you were going to bring up. I'll save it for you. But, another big guy who fits in the same category is Chris Davis. Chris Davis, 7 years, $161 million. He set the MLB record for consecutive at-bats without a hit by the end of his deal. And Prince Fielder, 9 years, $241 million or $214 million. He got traded 2 years into that deal and then barely played for the Rangers after that point. So big guys who are likelier to break down, big power hitters likelier to break down late in their careers. Albert Pujols can file him in this list as well. Guys who can't move around the diamond positionally, guys who are kind of stuck at first base or DH, those body types do not age well. Thinking about the Juan Soto contract and how that's likely to age, towards the back end of that deal. And then the pitchers, and then finally the injury-prone guys like Rendon, giving Anthony Rendon $200 million after you gave Albert Pujols $200 million, just like compounding mistakes and compounding errors. But yeah, I generally think that's the buckets that these bad contracts fall into. And by and large, it just seems like nobody's learned anything from the mistakes that were made with Bobby Bonilla.
I don't know if this is technically the worst contract. It's certainly one that pops into my mind. Pablo Sandoval's 5-year, $100 million contract with the Red Sox. I like my bus comically out of shape, and he took it to an art form level. He was like the majors version of Eddie Lacy, just showing up to training camp 40 pounds overweight to play running back. It's crazy that food and that kind of dedication or lack thereof can creep in when you're making that much money. You think at least in spring training one, you'd feel a little bit of pressure. He shows up, overweight. He hits 245, can't stay healthy. It was just ridiculous from the start. But that's what's interesting, I think, that you bring up, that the pitcher side of it, there's always the potential for a blow up, an arm injury, an elbow injury, boom, you're done. But then teams still can't help themselves by giving it to old pitchers, where it's like they are looking at the same charts that everybody else is in Major League Baseball in terms of, the diminishing returns and the fall off and hitting a wall, whatever you want to call it. But they still do it anyway. And it is interesting. It feels as though these decisions are not being made by the statisticians, the people with the math degrees, because I'm sure they could point to it and say, there's no way we'll be able to extract even 75% of the value that correlates to the money we're spending. But they do it anyway. They can't help themselves. And that's what's great about this sport. You have some really sharp minds, you have some really lousy minds, and then everybody else in the middle is just trying to guess, and hopefully they get lucky and they don't get burned with one of these onerous contracts that just hang around their neck like an albatross for years and sometimes decades in the case of Bobby Bonilla. But as I mentioned, this at least is a fun story that we can all get behind and enjoy on July 1st every year. Speaking of July 1st, here we are on Tuesday. We're going to hop into your best bet, go to your favorite underdogs. You got multiple bringing to the table here, which I love to see. And then we'll get into your final card before we get to Grant Neiffer's home run prop. So let's start with your best bet, Cubs minus 162. Boyd has been dealing. It's easy to basically tail him at this point in the season. 6 earned across his last 6 starts. His slider and curveball have been given batters fits this year. Opposing batters are hitting less than 200 against those two pitches. On the other side, though, we get Gavin Williams, who's been dialed in as well. His plus fastball has been serving him really well this season. It's topping out at about 97 miles per hour. The wind is blowing in from center, although it's light wind there at Wrigley. What was interesting to me as soon as I saw this, it's pretty rare for you to swallow juice in this range, anything north of minus 150. So you must really like the Cubs lineup because their power numbers the past month have been great. They're leading the bigs in the last 30 days in home runs, and they're second in the NL in slugging in that sample size as well. So how much of it is Boyd? How much of it is this Cubs lineup?
Yeah, I think Boyd is a big part of it because he does put the Guardians in their much lesser split. The Guardians are not a good offense, but they're 25th against righties and lefties. There's a big split, though, in those two numbers because as a whole, the league hits righties better than they do lefties. So I said 25th in both rankings, but a 94 WRC plus against righties, 75 against lefties. And over the past 30 days, they've dropped to a 68 against left-handed pitching. So 32% below the major league average. I do think Boyd is an underrated, effective pitcher. He's a bit of a soft tosser, but he does not give up hard contact, and he has very good command. And with the wind blowing in, I don't think he's likely to get hurt by this Guardians offense, which does not have much power to begin with. The Cubs offense, on the other hand, I do think they're a little bit better the deeper they get into a series against teams. The first game of a series not going to be as effective just because they grind pitchers down and they're able to get into bullpens, then they grind down those bullpens. So cumulatively, over the course of a playoff series, 5-game series, 7-game series, I think the Cubs are going to be really dangerous because they do wear down opposing bullpens. Well, on a Monday, you're just going to get to the bullpen, or on a Tuesday, you're just going to get to the bullpen a little bit earlier, having an off day the day before. Not as much of a concern for the Guardians bullpen coming in here. They should be well rested. That's set, and they're the better bullpen, slightly better in terms of season-long numbers. They are struggling lately, though. Past 30 days, the Guardians, 24th in expected FIP, 26th in strikeout minus walk rate from their bullpen. So not sure what's going on in the declining recent numbers. The season-long numbers still prefer Cleveland. My model still prefers Cleveland. That said, the Cubs are the much better defensive team. The Guardians have ranked better defensively in the past. They are closer to average. This year, 12th in defensive runs saved, 16th in the house above average. The Cubs are third by both metrics and are the number 2 team in my model defensively behind Toronto, who I talked up yesterday. Talk up again in a moment. But I make this line about minus 190. I would bet the Cubs up to around minus 175. It came up from minus 165 last night to minus 175 today. But in general, the Guardians, a team I'm looking to bet against going forward. I've mentioned multiple times, were probably the best value bet to miss the postseason. I think there may still be value on them to miss the playoffs at this point. I really ultimately think the AL Central is getting one playoff team at the end of the day, and I think that's going to be the Detroit Tigers. Maybe the Twins can get in. Maybe the Twins pick it up again. They have very good bullpen, very good pitching. I think the Twins could play better than they have to this point, but I'm not high on the Royals or the Guardians, and they're 2 teams I want to continue to bet against in the money line market going forward. And in particular today, I think there could be a lean to the under as well at Wrigley.
As we turn to your favorite underdogs, you teased it. You like the Toronto Blue Jays here. And hey, it's Canada Day, so a little bit of positive mojo for the boys north of the border. We talked about the Blue Jays being a threat to win the AL East in the last episode. Their quality play continued with your money line call yesterday. They edge out the Yanks 5-4. They've now won 4 out of their last 5, but they draw Max Fried in this spot. And just in the sample size of the last month, he's been Cy Young worthy. He's been Cy Young worthy really the entire season. His ERA in the last 30 days, 1.91, 34 Ks in 33 innings worth of work and just 5 walks. So he's absolutely been dialed in. Is this more faith in getting 3 or 4 runs off of Fried, or do you think Gaussman's last outing was not a mirage because he threw 8 innings of shutout ball against the Guardians, far and away his best start of 2025?
Yeah, Gaussman, until that start, had really been struggling in June. He was good earlier in the year, was struggling earlier in June, came back, good start last outing. So faith that he could pitch to the level that he's largely pitched this season. I've talked about Gaussman a lot this year, but basically 2024 is the outlier when you look at his multi-year history. He should be a little bit better than he was last season, and he generally has been. But a lot of the same things I pointed out yesterday for Toronto exist today. They are going against the left-handed pitcher. They are much better against lefties than they are against righties. 125 WRC plus over the last 30 days, 115 on the year. They're about 14 points, 12 points better against lefties than they are against righties. So Toronto in their better split. Bo Bichette was out of the lineup yesterday. He ended up tweaking something in batting practice. We'll see if he does come back today. I do believe I had him projected in. But basically, when Bichette is out, the Jays are just going to trade offense for defense. They played a very strong defensive lineup yesterday. I said that's what they were going to do against the left-handed pitcher. Ultimately, if you watch the game, Miles Straw probably won the game with a couple of catches in the 8th inning. The Yankees had a runner on second. The Jays walked Judge, by the way, intentionally twice. They're refusing to pitch to Judge. Maybe this is the start, the emergence of a new trend with how teams are going to handle Judge, because the Jays had no interest in pitching to Judge last night, intentionally walked him twice, including as the tying run with no outs and nobody on base. They just said, go ahead, put the tying run on base. They got him to advance to second base, and then they had 2 chances to cash in with a runner in scoring position to tie the game. And Miles Straw made 2 catches on balls with an expected batting average north of 450. I think one was 540. The other was around 450. So Straw went out, robbed 2 hits that probably would have tied the game. And as I've said, if you watch Jays games, they make a lot of catches in the outfield. They make a lot of plays in the infield that would stop base advancements or that would rob singles from falling in. And I do think it makes a significant difference over the course of a full game. It's worth about a half a run difference compared to their opponents in terms of saving defensive value. On the other end, you saw Anthony Volpe make an error, a throwing error after stopping a ball from leaving the infield. And then another ball went under the glove of the third base. I think was Jazz, went under Jazz's glove like not too long later that took the lead for Toronto. So just a big difference in defensive quality between these two teams, I think is a big edge for Toronto against everybody. Won't reiterate the defensive rankings, but they do have the better bullpen as well, in my opinion, normally. Little and Hoffman both for back-to-back days. So I've downgraded the Jays pen relative to where I normally have it, and potentially have downgraded their lineup if Bichette is not going to be in there. But I still projected them around plus 120, plus 125 probably at the worst. So I bet the Jays down to plus 130 or plus 135 here on Canada Day, and hopefully they can keep things going and get themselves back into this race in the American League East. Fried, to the point about Fried, his ERA has been phenomenal this year. It's sub 2. His expected ERA, though, is around 3.3. So I do think Fried is due for some negative regression at some point as well. And even though on looking at the names of the guys in this Jays lineup, it may not seem like a particularly tough matchup, they do hit lefties quite well, and they're very patient, and they take a lot of pitches. So it's a frustrating offense to go against, and there's not too many arms I trust in that Yankees bullpen coming in behind Fried either.
As I mentioned, double dog action here, which I love to see. We have the Nats at plus 135. You also like over 9.5 in this matchup with the Tigers. And when I saw that you were on the Nats and it was Detroit, I knew that it had to be a Jack Flaherty start. And of course, he is involved. We've been fading this guy for much of the season with good reason. When you look at his ERA per month, it has jumped every month. 3.18 to 3.38 to 4.67 to 6.84 here in June. It has just exploded. He has been awful. Pick a stat, and it's really troubling. You look at his whip, 1.52 this past month. His command has been all over the place. Any more to like about Washington potentially winning and also pushing this over and getting to 10 plus runs in this one?
Yeah, the Nationals offense has been hot in the last 2 weeks too. 116 WRC plus, eighth in MLB. James Wood got intentionally walked 4 times with the Angels. That speaks to James Wood's quality as a hitter. There were situations in all 4 of those spots where you could reasonably intentionally walk a guy. I'm not a huge fan of intentional walks in general, but given certain situations, I think there are spots to do it. And he was walked 4 times with first base open. Judge, as I said, walked yesterday as the tying run with no outs and nobody on base. James Wood was walked in spots where you wouldn't normally walk guys. But that said, he looks like a superstar hitter. And Trevor Williams, to the point of the Nationals pitching has actually been a little bit unlucky this season. Williams was really lucky last year. His ERA finished around 2. He had an expected ERA of around 3. This year's expected ERA is 4.2. But his actual ERA is 5.65. His expected FIP also around 4.4. So high batting average on balls in play for Williams this year, about 30 points higher than his career average. Strain rate about 10% below his career average. I think just explains the 1.5 run difference in ERA relative to expected ERA. I'm not going to love sweating the Nationals bullpen, but that is where we get runs. As you said, I'm on the Nationals, but I'm also on the over in this matchup. I do think the Nationals can get to at least 4 or 5 runs here. And if they lose the game, it means that the over has cashed as well, because I projected this total around 10 runs. The Nationals bullpen is just awful. They rank 30th on the year by expected FIP, strikeout minus walk rate, pitching plus, and body RA. And if you split the season over the last 30 days, they're 30th by all 4 of those metrics in the past month as well. It's honestly astounding to be 30th by all 4 key performance indicators for bullpen metrics, and then to split the season up over a 30-day monthly split, and they rank 4th, or they rank 30th by all 4 metrics yet again. Like I figured, I legitimately clicking through the splits and the filters on Fangraphs, I figured I must have made a mistake, or it didn't reload the new splits, because it was like there's no way they're 30th in all 4 categories, but somehow they are. So yeah. I've used the Facebook Mark Stay From meme already with the Nationals bullpen this year, but that's legitimately how I feel anytime you are using or betting on their bullpen to do anything of consequence. It is an uncomfortable sweat, but at least they had an off day yesterday and they're coming in fully rested. But yeah, just wanted to highlight the Flaherty stuff. He wore down last year, much worse in the second half of 2024 than he was in the first half of 2024. And it seems evident based on the 2025 numbers that he's wearing down again. We don't want to go back through the injury history and the fact that there wasn't a big free agent market for him, but it's very evident that the arm is not going to hold up and it is starting to decline. Strikeout minus walk rate through May, 22%. In June, 10.7%. Stuff plus down a couple points. Pitching plus down 10 points. Body array up a half a run. And the expected FIP up from 3.4 to 4.8. So I do think Flaherty is a pitcher to continue to target against in terms of overs and money lines going forward, and hopefully we get a blow up from him today. Even watching the last start against the Athletics, the Athletics are not a consistent offense that can put together good at bats against you. I trust this Nationals offense to do it much more, but he was throwing a lot of uncompetitive pitches in that start. And we'll get to Skeens in a minute too, who I think is showing similar issues. Just a lot of counts that we're getting to 3-0, 3-1, where the batter didn't even have to decide whether to swing. Just completely uncompetitive pitches coming in. He is still throwing, sharp sliders. He's able to break some of them off. But instead of being consistently in the zone or consistently attacking hitters, he's finding a lot of spots where he's just pitching himself into trouble because he's falling deep behind in these counts. So yeah, I think it's very evident that Flaherty is struggling and scuffling, and the Tigers may need to go out and get another starting pitcher before the deadline.
We go from one same game parlay to another one here on your card. The West Sacramento A's money line and over 8.5 against the Tampa Bay Rays down in Florida. The wind is pushing straight out to center field at Steinbrenner Field. We know that Shane Baz is going to put runners on, so having that park factor and that wind going, to help this A's lineup with runners in scoring position will be great, because in 5 of his last 8 starts, he's walked 3 or more batters. That got him into trouble against Detroit recently, where those extra runners turned into 5 earned runs. On the other side of this matchup, you're going to go over 8.5, so you need Jeff Springs to at least get into a little bit of trouble. He's been solid the past 2 months, but he too has struggled with command and giving up long ball. He's given up 9 home runs in his last 11 starts. As I mentioned, the park factor and wind is going to hurt both of the starting pitchers here. So walk me through the A's and this total.
Yeah, I make this about 9.5 runs, and I make the A's plus 124. So A's down to plus 135, and the over 9 up to minus 110. Discussed regularly the wind and weather effect at Steinbrenner Field this year. The park factors have ultimately played very comparably to Yankee Stadium despite the improved weather, but it is increasing home runs. It is reducing doubles, triples, singles. And in general, like if the ball does not leave the yard, it is difficult for these games to go over the total. So need home runs in this matchup. The wind should help tonight. 8-mile-an-hour winds out to left field. The Rays offense has been phenomenal. Past 30 days, second in WRC plus and 124, but they are better against righties than they are against lefties. They have a number of left-handed sticks that kind of boost their offensive profile. 114 WRC plus against righties on the year, 94 against left-handed pitching. So I do think the A's are getting the better of their splits using Springs against the Rays, but just nothing, no like major analysis here. It's mostly pricing and mostly my adjustments for weather. And A's to plus 135, over to 9 at minus 110. You can still get a juiced 8.5 right now. I would take 8 minus 120 or 8 minus 125 as opposed to taking 9 at even money or 9 at minus 105. I'd rather get in below the key number and lay a little bit more juice, but just know there's about a 3 cent, 4 cent difference, or I should say a 20 cent difference in terms of like the half run adjustment at the key numbers. So 9, just in terms of like equating it, 8.5 minus 120 basically equals 9 at even money. If you're trying to compare the plus money 9s and the juiced 8.5s, it's roughly 20 cents. But in this instance, at the 8.5, I'd rather lay even just a touch more juice. I'd go, a 22 cent adjustment instead of 20 if you're looking to buy an 8.5.
Third straight matchup that you like an over between, in this one, the Cardinals and the Buccos, but the eyebrow gets raised here. Esquin's over. You look at his last 5 starts in June, the totals tapped out at 3, 3, 3, 12 runs, and 6 runs. Is it just an issue of the lack of run support for him? And do you put any stock in that? Do you think the lineup is pressing? They know that there's more national attention. They know that they've let him down throughout the year. It has to be a little bit mental, because on the other side of this coin, you have the hottest lineup in baseball behind him right now. 37 runs in the last 4 games for Pittsburgh. So going over the 7 here, do you think it's going to go way over? And if so, do you consider playing an alternate total with the hottest lineup, at least in the NL?
I do like getting the 7 at juice in a potential 4-3 game, just because the Pirates bullpen so many times this year has blown leads for Skeens. Like, I think about the Pirates being up potentially 3-1 here after 6 innings, 7 innings, and then the Pirates bullpen comes in and makes it 3-3, and then at least you have the push probability on 7. So very similar. Like, I'd rather lay juice at the key number, not below the key number, but at the key number. I'd rather lay a 7 minus 120 than take a 7.5 minus 110. I'd lay just a little bit more on that juice at the 7. But Skeens, like I said, with Flaherty, I've just noticed more at bats over the past month where he's uncompetitive. His last start against the Brewers, they had him on they got through 30 pitches on him in the first inning. It was just very obvious that the Brewers came in with a game plan of, this guy gets a lot of swing and miss outside of the zone. We're not going to do that. And we're going to try to foul off everything in the zone and get him to walk us. And I think they got 4 walks, 4 runs against him. They just did a phenomenal job grinding him down, but also he just wasn't putting the ball in the zone. It was a lot of uncompetitive pitches outside of the zone. And yes, like that could have been a one-off command issue. It might have been particularly humid that day in Milwaukee, and he was just struggling with the heat and the conditions in the afternoon. But it's not the only start where I've seen it from him over the past month. His walk rate is up to 9.5% in June, 6% on the season. His strikeout rate is actually up slightly in June, but it's down relative to last year, and that is slightly intentional. He's throwing more sinkers this year. He's trying to get more balls in play, generate weaker contact, get through these at-bats quicker, but he's just not pitching as deep into these starts recently because the walks have gone up and because the pitch counts have gone up. So if you're going to involve a little bit more of the Pirates bullpen in this game, if you're going to tell me that he's just going to put more runners in scoring position because he's walking guys a little bit more frequently, yeah, I do think we can get to 7 runs here. I make this 7.8, and obviously a game can't end on 7.5 runs. So that is why I would recommend taking the juice 7, as opposed to laying the juice, or taking the plus money, I should say, on the 7.5. But I do think Skeens has been laboring a bit, and finding ways to bet against him is under outs prop, maybe over walks, under strikeouts could all be interesting ways to attack this. I'm not sure how good the Cardinals are at avoiding chases offhand. I need to look into that a little bit deeper. Wish Colin Whitchurch were here today to talk about the walks props. But yeah, Skeens, I feel like Skeens over 1.5 walks, this could be a good spot for it. And, combining it with the over, combining it with over earned runs allowed or something like that. Those are the correlated SGP angles I would consider playing on this game. There's probably value going in against Skeens right now on a start-to-start basis in general. I'm sure you can find value betting Skeens not to do good things, just because everybody wants to bet him to do good things. You could probably find value by being a contrarian. And I think the easiest contrarian angle is the over today, but there's certainly a number of correlated angles with it that I think you could explore as well.
It's humid and the wind is pushing out to left center in Flushing for the Brewers and Mets, but you like the under here, and I have to assume it's because of the starting pitching matchup, Holmes versus Peralta. You're probably going to need pretty special outings from both of them, because both of these bullpens are kind of middling to average, based on even just the splits the last 30 days. You can look at season long as well for these bullpens. So you're hoping, obviously, that you're in that 4 to 5 run range before the bullpens get involved here. Also, in terms of this one going under, you have the Mets lineup that has not been pulling its weight. They've gone north of 4 runs just once in the past 8 games. Any other angle or price point elements that convince you to take the under here at 8.5?
Yeah, I think the Brewers win a low scoring game here. It's actually a lot of the driver of my under is the Brewers bullpen has been much better lately. They're 4th in expected FIP, 4th in strikeout minus walk over the past 30 days. They've finally figured out the right order of their arms, and also Pat Murphy is extremely aggressive, bringing guys in and out. And with Freddie Peralta on the mound today, I'm sure he will try to win this game with their best pitcher on the hill. They'll figure things out with the bullpen in other games this week, but off of an off day with their bullpen fully rested, I'd imagine Murphy presses on the gas pretty aggressively tonight with those relievers, and they have been pitching quite well. And as you said, the Mets offense has been not only a little bit cold, they're having team meetings, like players only meetings to try to fire themselves up because it's been going so poorly. And largely the pitching staff just got absolutely shelled in Pittsburgh. But Milwaukee offense does not scare me in particular. They're also one of the top defensive teams too. So regardless of the Mets struggling offensively, Milwaukee should rob a couple of base hits from them tonight and hopefully help keep this game under. I make this 7.85, so under 8.5 to about minus 118, or even, you could take this down one down to 8 at plus money. It's closer to a 1% edge for me at that number, but I think the market has moved down. And, in this instance, this is the other, angle of like the laying juice versus not laying juice. So when you're not betting a key number versus a key number, the difference is closer to 17 cents than it is to 20 cents. So I would rather take, for instance, under 8 at plus money rather than taking under 8.5 at minus 117. That's just the difference in price comparison. Would prefer 8 plus to a juiced 8.5.
2 more totals, and then we get to Grant Neiffer's dinger card here on Tuesday. We're going to look at Cincinnati and Boston, the total sitting at 9.5, and you're going over on that one. When you look at this, the wind is going to favor the batters here in Boston, and the Red Sox have been playing beer league softball really for the past 2 weeks. In their past 8 games, the runs have come in at 11.5 per game. They're sending Richard Fitz to the mound in this one. He'll be lucky if he gets through the 4th inning. He'll probably be turning it over to the bullpen early. And then Brady Singer on the other side of this matchup for the Reds. He's been issuing a ton of walks this season, so you know that runners are going to be in scoring position all night long. There's an opportunity, in my opinion, for this one to blow past the number of 9.5. I know that we've kind of split hairs a little bit. Are you going to trade in a half run in one direction, pay for it, or try to get more juice in payout potential on the other side of it? Are you sticking purely with 9.5, or do you think you can mess with some alternates as well?
No, you could do plus money 10.5 here. I think that'd be reasonable. I make this, I actually don't have my number written down here. Oh no, I make this about 10.5. So, 10.5 at plus 110 would be a bet for me. And I'm sure you can get a plus 110 considering 10 is juiced. So I personally like it to 10 at minus 108, but a 10 at plus 110, as I said, like that 10, 20 cent difference, that's basically comparable. That's an 18-cent difference, right? Plus 110 versus minus 108. So yeah, 10 at plus 10 and a half at plus 110. I think is an alt you can mess around with for sure. And you're getting in below a key number there of 11 as well. So yesterday, I bet the Reds. Obviously, did not work out, but Chase Burns was definitely tipping pitches earlier in the game, which is why he got shelled. The game basically played out evenly from there. I think if you eliminate that first inning, the Red Sox still win the game 6-5, but they still got to 11 runs combined, even with Burns tipping pitches. So weather, much better today, and the Reds also in their better offensive split. Weather is really good for the over today. 87 degrees at first pitch, 90 real feel, but 8 to 10 mile an hour winds blowing out to right field. It's also going to be rainy and a little bit humid as well. So I think offensive conditions should be boosted by about 10% today relative to a normal day at Fenway Park. Normally, I'd make this total about 9.7. For today, I make it closer to 10.5. Triggered the win 10 out system on Action Labs, has a lifetime 54% win rate, a 5.1% ROI. Specifically at Fenway Park, this system's 68, 55, and 5, which is a 56% win rate, and the ROI goes up to 6.5%. I'm not that high on Brady Singer. 4.7 expected ERA. It was 4.65 last year, but his expected FIP and his strikeout minus walk rate are both moving in the wrong direction this year as well. Expected FIP up from 3.6 to 4.5. Strikeout minus walk down from 15% to 11%, which is below the major league average. So I do think the Red Sox, even though the Red Sox have struggled without Devers in their lineup, I do think this is a guy they can get runs off of. And as I said, the Reds are back in their better split. They faced the lefty yesterday. They ranked 25th against lefties, but they are league average against righties, 15th with a 102 WRC plus. And Richard Fitz is a guy, Dick Fitz, a guy I've always seen potential in, but the results just have not been there. Career 4.9 expected FIP, 8% strikeout minus walk rate. He's just been a replacement level starter. So he has a good slider. There remains upside there. The Red Sox have been pretty good at pitching development, but he's gotten hit in the games he's been in. So over up to 10 at minus 108. As I said, 10.5 plus 110 would interest me as well. And yeah, hopefully we get some runs in Boston tonight. Was on the Reds last night. I would actually consider the Red Sox tonight. I make the Red Sox about minus 123 based on projected lineups. You can get minus 110 currently. I probably like that up to minus 114, but I do want to wait for lineups to come out before placing that bet, just because I'm already on the over. For example, if the Red Sox end up sitting somebody that would hurt the over, it's going to hurt their money line projection as well. So I don't want to be wrong twice in terms of my pregame position until I get lineups out. But once we get lineups, assuming everything checks out, I'll probably be betting the Red Sox money line as well.
Last play on your card, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to have to hold my breath on this one. Under 11.5 between the Astros and the Rockies. And the reason for my trepidation, Chase Dolander, former top 10 pick, has gotten the start here. But man, the early returns have just been awful for the former Tennessee Volunteer. His ERA 6.06. Batters are just pounding his fastball, which at least on paper should be one of his best pitches. It tops out at 98 miles per hour. Just not enough movement on it. Opposing batters are slugging 607 with 11 home runs on that pitch alone through 13 starts. So I assume, in terms of the under, you're envisioning a gem on the other side of this from the Astros, Colton Gordon. He's been dealing this month 3 wins, an ERA of 2.14 across June. Excellent command. By the way, we talked about a lot of pitchers in this episode that have lost the strike zone, putting batters on, giving those free opportunities for offenses to score with runners in scoring position. Just 2 walks and 21 innings worth of work this month for Gordon. Anything else I'm missing with this matchup?
No, you nailed it with Gordon and his command. I think he's the guy who keeps the game under. He's been phenomenally effective. I think Brandon Walters, the other guy that the Astros brought up, they've both been great. You know, these were not starting pitchers who, by projection systems, were expected to be in the big leagues this year. And Gordon has been phenomenal. 3.5 expected ERA, 3.46 expected FIP, so line up perfectly with one another. 19% strikeout minus walk rate. That's a number 2 level starting pitcher. 105 pitching plus. 302 body ERA. But as you said, it's mostly been the command. 3% walk rate. He had a 4.7% walk rate in AAA and a 111 location plus rating. So this is a guy who puts the ball in the zone, but also puts it in spots that opposing hitters are not able to attack. He's living on the black. He's getting a lot of called strikes and also just pitching very effectively. I should point out the Rockies are in their lesser split here. A 72 or 62 WRC plus against left-handed pitching. That is 30th in baseball and by a lot. So 38% below the major league average. I think there is 75 WRC plus against right-handed pitching, which is also 30th, but still a little bit closer to the major league average. But yeah, Colton Gordon is a guy who I think is somebody to keep an eye on and keep betting on going forward. And I do like him to help keep this game under tonight. As you mentioned with Dollander, 93rd percentile in fastball velocity, also has a 120 stuff plus on his curve and a 122 on his cutter. But the fastball is getting hammered. The fastball does not grade out as well as the velocity would suggest. And I think there is value in looking at stuff plus numbers for that reason. But one thing Dollander is doing well is suppressing hard hit balls. He's in the 70th percentile for average exit velocity against, and he's in, I think, the 60th percentile for hard hit rate. So the command has been terrible. He's not generating the whiffs, but he does have an above average ground ball rate, and he is allowing slightly less hard contact than the league in general. So hopefully Dollander can help keep this game under tonight, because the Astros are in their lesser split. I've mentioned it multiple times this year, but you want to bet Astros overs or Astros money line when they're facing lefties. You want to go under or against them when they're facing right-handed pitching. 101 WRC plus, 17th against righties. Against righties. 120, third against lefties, and it's only grown over the past 30 days. Fourth against lefties, 20th against right-handed pitching. So until Yordan Alvarez comes back for the Astros, I think you can continue to attack them with right-handed pitching and bet on them against left-handed pitching. Even once Yordan comes back, you can bet on them against left-handed pitching because Yordan crushes lefties better than he hits righties. That said, the under, I make this game 10.5. I bet the under 11 to minus 110 here. And then if you want an alt under 10.5, I'd probably want something closer to plus 125, but definitely like the under in this matchup. And I believe it has come down from 11.5. So hopefully moving in the right direction.
I heard from some of our listeners yesterday they missed the home run props. We missed them too. And for that reason, I'm proud to say that Grant Neiffer is back from Scores and Odds for his home run prop bets for today's slate. Grant, take it away.
Thanks, guys. All right, it is Dinger Tuesday. We get a 50% boost over on FanDuel. I'm using it on this Dinger parlay, 3 legs, 219 to 1 odds with that boost. Starting off with the first leg, Ben Rice plus 470 over at FanDuel. Now, Rice, he should be in the starting lineup. You're not going to see him on most other sites, but he should be in there. Should probably be leading off and gets a match versus Gausman. Gausman has been a plus matchup overall this season. 4 lefty power, giving around 1.4 home runs per 9. 2 lefties so far this season. Toronto has played like an excellent ballpark. 4 lefty power this season, ranking 3rd in the league. Rice, one of the better power hitters in the league, around a 16% barrel rate on the season. Everything looks good in this spot, and the odds are far too high. Next up, Junior Caminero, plus 330 over at FanDuel. Gets a matchup versus Jeffrey Springs. Springs has been absolutely crushed by lefty or by righty power so far this season, giving up around 1.5 home runs per 9. The weather is great over in Tampa Bay for hitting. Low 80s, wind blowing out at 6 miles per hour, high humidity. There is a chance of a delay, but the game should play regardless, and the weather should be good throughout the game. Caminero, one of the best home run hitters in the league so far this season, with 21 home runs in 79 games. Odds just a little bit too low given the spot, the stadium, and the weather. I'm rolling with it. Last up, Pete Crow Armstrong, plus 500. Gets a matchup versus Gavin Williams. Gavin Williams has struggled with lefty power so far in his career. Temps over in Chicago, good low 80s, decent humidity. Wind is blowing in slightly, mostly crossing during this game, and I'm not too worried about it because it starts at about 8 miles per hour, crossing slightly in from right field. But the wind, as the game goes along, will almost fully die out all the way down to a negligible 3 miles per hour. So I'm not worried about that. PCA has been one of the best home run hitters in the league, so give him the plus matchup, good weather, and the massive odds at plus 500. I'm absolutely loving that bet. Parlay all 3 of them together, 219 to 1 odds with that 50% profit boost over at FanDuel. I'm out of here. Leo.
That'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to tail some of the bets that you heard from Sean and Grant in today's episode, look for the quick slip links in the episode description. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. Also, check out our Action Network Discord. There's a link in the episode description to sign up for that as well. We'll be back on Monday because Friday is the 4th of July, so we're taking that off. We'll be back on Monday with more best bets, favorite underdogs, home run props, everything you've come to love here from Payoff Pitch. So be sure to come back on Monday, which is a live episode over on YouTube. If you want to go ahead and subscribe and throw us a like on the YouTube channel as well, we'd really appreciate it. For Grant Neiffer and Sean Zerillo, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. And as always, best of luck with all your bets.